Welcome to the Artist Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Goslow, and I'm very delighted today to have my new friend. I just met him quite recently, and I invited him onto this show. Welcome, Scott Allen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, since I started this podcast, it's been on my mind that it can be a great opportunity to meet and talk with other artistic people of various backgrounds and walks of life. And so it was like on the tip of my tongue when I ran into you just last week over at the Comedy Spot in Sacramento. And so here you are. It's pretty cool. Is this your first time doing this kind of thing?
Yeah. First time on a podcast, and first time like just jamming with somebody I just met a week ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and just so that you know, if you're listening to this, we haven't played together, and we just did what you just heard before this. It was us jamming a little bit. Him on guitar, me on the keys. He's here at my studio, my home studio. That also is where I teach piano. Keyboards all over the place here. And so we got hooked up to one of the amps and the keyboard, and then I said, okay, we're going to roll this, and we're going to see what happens. And I like the idea of having this podcast have a little bit of that. Even if it could be a little strange for someone, maybe, to come in, try something new.
Yeah. It's like what being an artist is all about, right? It's doing different things and seeing how they work for you, and figuring out, what works best for you.
Scott, why don't you just talk a little, because I'm still getting to know you as well. Tell us a little about your musical background, and then lead us into the present, which is your latest project that you were telling me about. What's your story?
Okay. Well, when I was a little kid, I would listen to a lot of pop and Motown and whatever was on the radio, and my first musical instrument was a little keyboard, and I remember trying to play along to songs on the radio. And when I was, I think, 13, 15 years old, I started really picking up the guitar and trying to play more. And when I was in my teens, my friends and we would sit around and we would just like write songs, and then we decided to form a band. So I did that for a little bit, and then I had a friend who had a band that was, he needed a drummer, so I went out and I bought some drums. I didn't really have a whole lot of experience playing drums. I was pretty not good at the beginning. My hi-hat and kick drum were always together. There was no independent motion, so it was a little robotic. So I did that for a while. I was in that band for 10 years as a drummer, never having played drums. I got to the point where my dad, who played drums, was like, "You're better than I was." So I thought that's good, I guess.
So 10 years in a band, that's quite a while. You guys must have had some fun.
17 to like 27.
Tell us about the project you're working on now.
Well, now I am working on scoring a short film called Flipped for my friend Nick Coleman. Nick and I used to do improv at Comedy Spot, improv comedy.
So, making jokes, not playing music.
Right.
You're talking about, just so that people are clear.
Making jokes.
Yeah.
Coming up with strange and interesting situations off the top of your head,
Which is like what we do anyway as improvisers on music, except giving words and characters to it and stuff.
Yeah.
So you met him at the Comedy Spot.
Yeah, and he started doing more and more filming of like comedy spot shows. And and so what happened was Nick was on Facebook and he was looking for somebody to score this film, and he had posted something that said, does anyone have any music that sounds similar to this track from, I don't even remember.
Hitchcock, right?
It was a Hitchcock, Hitchcock film. And I said, well, I got this. I have this little track that I just made up after watching Rear Window. I was inspired. So I made this eerie little, I don't know, it's like a little 1-minute track. And I showed it to him, and he was like, that's awesome. And then he said, he sent me a message, and he's like, hey, do you want to score my movie? And I said, I've never scored a movie before, but I'll give it a shot.
Some artists, we have a tendency, and I'm talking about myself here, but I have at times just over-isolated myself. But the truth is, so many things happen, opportunities happen because of someone you know. Like having a relationship, knowing someone, and then they say, hey, would you like to do my movie? Just as informal as that, like you're saying. Like, people have needs, and when they think you're there, and you're like, hey, why don't you try it? It's kind of expedient to go with people that you already know. You want to add to that?
Oh, yeah. I would definitely say that, it's good to surround yourself with, good people, I guess, because I would say that it's true. I do kind of isolate myself. I mean, I don't really try to mix and mingle with people. I'm kind of a little social anxiety and whatever, but
well, you're a creative person, so
yeah.
It comes with the territory for some of us.
Well,
but
yeah,
you are
here. I feel different, like you said in the first podcast. Like I don't see the world like everyone else sees it. What about this idea, or what about that idea? But yeah, I would say that it is, it's who you know, and I also have adopted this philosophy in recent years of just taking opportunities when they arise.
Well, you're here, for example.
Yeah. So there you go.
It's not a given. I could have asked you, and you've been like, I don't know, or something. Another thing that I really liked about what you were saying, which anybody who's listening to this who has been involved in creativity probably knows this, but sometimes people who are just either they want to do it or they've thought of doing it, they may not realize just how organic the whole process is. Like, he's like, okay, here's a thing, here's a scene. What can you do with this? And then you were telling me before, here's an idea. What do you think? And then he says, well, I really like this, but could you drop that instrument or whatnot? It's a very organic process it's literally the final product is result of so many changes usually and so many revisions that it could bear no resemblance to the original thoughts or the original ideas. Talk a little about that.
Yeah, it's interesting because now I'm composing things, but I'm trying to compose it through his mind. Like I know what he's going for. He sent me like 2 pages of notes of movies that influenced him, or that where he drew inspiration for a certain scene, and can you make it kind of like this, have this feeling to it. And even though I'm creating these songs and putting passion and feeling in it, at the end of the day I'm also like, this is his vision, this is his film, and it's what he wants. So
well, you're being of service.
Yeah.
We all have these ambitions in this world, whatever your media as an artist, your fantasies of what you want. But there is something to be said for either paying your dues or simply just being of service in a way that people around you actually want to make use of your skills.
Yeah.
And while it can be nice to fantasize about complete autonomy and doing everything the way we want to do it, and we have projects where we can do that, especially when you're not yet established and you're still working to get established, it's mostly about collaborating with others, helping them out. Of course, there are also different personalities artistically. Some people are just, from the get-go, the ones who want to be in charge, and even they have to learn how to create value for all the people working with them. One way or another, creating value and being of service to others is kind of essential if you're going to be involved in something involving other people.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like what you were saying about like being in charge. It wasn't actually until my friend Tommy had his band and he needed a drummer that I played two shows as a singer and guitarist of all the songs I wrote and whatever. And then I didn't really feel like I was very good at it. I didn't have the confidence, and so I was like, I'm going to play drums. And I thought to myself, how can I be of service? I can be of service here. He needs a drummer. I'm going to pick up the sticks and I'm going to play, and even if I don't know how to play, I'm going to figure it out. And then eventually it evolved, and we got better.
I have sometimes felt a little like you, kind of like maybe stepping aside for what might have been the fantasy, but still finding ways to be of value. My first rock band experience, I was in a Journey tribute band, which I had a lot of fun in. Actually,
pretty awesome.
It was very, very fun because we were doing these great gigs. It was awesome, great people, getting paid and playing, and being in a Journey band as a keyboardist. Believe me, there are less interesting keyboard parts.
Yeah, I was going to say Journey has a lot of cool.
It has a lot of cool keyboard parts, and I'm so glad that I was, humble enough to just join someone else's project. At the time, it was a new thing for me to do, and I learned so much from, getting to be the keyboardist. What it's all about to me is we don't always. It may not be what we think of consciously, but there's things out there that, if we're open, will benefit us as artists, no matter what you do artistically. And being open to that is part of this process.
Taking yourself out of your comfort zone can lead to good things sometimes.
I remember when I first came up with this podcast, I was excited for like a week or two. And then I was freaked out.
Yeah.
And then I didn't do anything for a couple weeks. But somehow I just got through that. And then it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to pick myself up here. I'm going to keep going with this. And then we got the ball rolling. And I think that, the brain, I've thought a lot about the brain. Our brains are survival mechanisms that think they're keeping us safe, mostly trying to avoid pain and go for pleasure, and based on what it already knows. So it's not going to be... The thing about being an artist is we're inherently a visionary in a sense. We have a vision for something that hasn't yet been done. If you're really, innovator, that's kind of what we're doing. Yeah. Then you inherently can run into that part of your brain that's like, wait a second here, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's like the exact opposite of that innovation spirit. Is the part of you that's like, no, man, this is not how it's supposed to go. But that's the irony of it, is that really that's something that calls us, is that innovation.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like, your brain can give you all these great ideas, and then at the same time it can be like fighting you on those ideas. And I'm wearing a Queens of the Stone Age shirt. There's actually two of their songs that they mentioned fear in. One of the lines that I like and that keeps going through my mind is fear of failure is all you've started. You haven't started anything. You're afraid to start because you're afraid you're going to fail. Well, just start and see where it takes you.
Yeah.
And then another line from a different song is he says, fear is the hand that pulls your strings. It's like, it's what's making you not do this, or not, do this and not that. So that's the interpretation I get anyway. You're not doing anything now, or nobody knows who you are now. So if you do something that doesn't work out, who's going to know? Who's going to care? And except for you. I told this guy at a party recently that I was writing songs for my friend's film, and he said, "You're a composer." And I said, "No, I'm just helping a friend out." And then my wife is like, "But you're composing music for this film. You're a composer." And I said, "Okay." So it's like you got to get in that mindset and just go for it. I'm trying to go back to childhood in a way where when you drew a picture, you didn't worry about what everyone was going to think of your picture. You drew it because that's how you felt, and you didn't care if you scribbled out of the lines or whatever. Yeah. It's just, that's yours and you created it. And yeah, I don't think anyone should really be too hard on themselves. They should just get out there and create.
Well, we can lead the way.
Yes.
It's easier said than done, but the truth is, we need to learn how to not take the brain's bullshit and stay in charge of our lives and our heads. And yes, I did say bullshit, but it's my podcast. And so, which by the way, even me doing this podcast is a way of breaking out of my brain's bullshit. And the thing is that we are always in charge. You are always in charge. It's just a question of whether you have been sort of allowing yourself to believe and listen to and capitulate to that head stuff, or whether you're not. Just because it talks at you with all of its, oh, you said something, whatever the concerns may be, it's like fear of failure, and it's like it just talks. It's like brilliant at just talking.
Yeah.
It's like, shut up, man. What do you know about it?
Yeah. And it's your brain telling your brain that it's not capable or good enough, which is silly. Like you said, it's the two sides or whatever, speaking the artistic side and
I think one other key is using our brain, the thinking part of the brain, what I've heard called the reflective part of your brain, to reflect, analyze, pull apart, asking yourself questions like, is this true? What is the real failure here? What is the risk of failure? And when you start engaging your reflection, like talking and really thinking, you starts to poke holes into this whole charade of fear and worry.
Yeah, and who shouldn't be afraid are, people like myself who, I've played in bands, I do improv comedy and stuff. But like I said, no one knows who I am. I'm just going out there and I'm having fun. The people that I, look up to are the artists that I, look up to. I mean, they've got to be terrified. They're walking out in front of 80,000 people to sing. You think they're not afraid that, oh, my voice is going to go out, I'm going to break a string, or, the amp's not going to work. I'm sure they have these things, but I'm sure that after a while, they just get to the point where they're like, okay, I'm going to do the best I can. I know I can do this, so I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do it. I'm going to trust all these other people doing their jobs, that they know what they're doing, and you get over it, and
we have faith.
Yeah, you have faith.
You can't control if there's 80,000 people. That's a lot of unpredictability. Right. But when you just start to walk the path with faith that it's going to all work itself out.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said, for that saying, ignorance is bliss, because when I agreed to score this thing, I'd never scored anything before, and I'm, of course I'm jumping at the opportunity because, I want to create and I want to put something out that people are going to hear and hopefully enjoy. So there's that, I kind of act before I think, it's like, who wants to do this? And I'm like, I'll do it. And then now I'm trying to figure it out. And maybe that's part of what helps in the creative process is just not thinking too much.
Sometimes, more like that child you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that sounds fun. Let's climb a wall. I don't know. Let's become wizards. It's like, that's like that childhood instinct in a way, or the innocence of not having that overthinking, as they call it.
Right. I mean, as a creative artistic person, I believe, when you're a kid and you're playing out in the yard, you go out and you're hanging out with your friends when you're a little kid and you're playing and you're not thinking about what you're going to do next. You're just your friends let's go on the swings, and you're like, yeah, let's go on the swings, and hey, let's go to the monkey bars. And I'm like, okay. You're not sitting there I have to do 20 pumps or whatever on the swings before I can get off because I have a job that I got. You're just going with the flow.
Well, the interesting thing about going with the flow, and I was talking about it a few minutes ago, and there is an importance to that, and yet there's different types of flows, and when it comes to putting out your own work or engaging in a new project you've never done before or getting uncomfortable, in some way, it's almost like on some psychic level, we know that we're stepping out of the pack or the herd, and whatever we're comfortable with. And literally stepping away from a flow that has become normal to us, perhaps, of like, this is what people normally do. Like, whose flow are you talking about? You're going with your own inner instinct, which goes against the flow of what other people are doing. That can be incredibly hard, and that takes courage. And it literally, I was reading a book a few months ago, it's talking about how we literally feel fear when we go against the herd or the other people. In many situations, it's wired into us. So when it comes to something noble or brave or courageous, like putting out a piece of art that has never been done before, so it's not easy, but it is, at a certain point, sometimes it just feels necessary.
Sure. I mean, yeah, you got to take a risk. You got to take a chance. Otherwise, you're just sitting there. I mean, if you don't create the things that you're thinking, you're only robbing yourself and the world from those things. And if you have it in you, you should let it out. Because I mean, maybe that's why you're here. Maybe that's why I'm here. Is we're the conduit for these ideas to come out of the ether into the.
I can't think of a better reason to be here. I mean, personally,
Yeah.
that's what it's all about to me. Like you said before, no one's watching you anyway, or something.
Yeah.
It's like
Nobody knows who I am. I mean,
Yeah.
if this movie came out and a couple of my friends were like, "Oh, you did a good job on that film," and then I got asked to do another one, then I would feel a little bit of fear to have to live up to that.
Right, well, but also at that point, you'll have grown enough.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be ready for whatever that challenge is.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, fear doesn't kill us. It's
No.
just a feeling. But
Yeah.
we can manage it if we're not like way over in our head so much that you're completely terrified, then it's probably not going to work. But if you have a little fear and you just take it, I think life has a way of working out. If you're afraid of getting started, it's not like you're going to be, at the Grammys tomorrow,
Right.
worrying about how you look and everything. You don't have to worry about it. It's not usually going to happen that way. It's usually going to be a step-by-step process, a little at a time. But if you take the first step, you'll grow and you'll be somewhere new. You'll have a new vantage point.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to take whatever's the next step at that point. And it's an ongoing journey.
Yeah, and I agree. In fact, like that's one of the things my wife and I talk about. I always get ahead of myself. I'm always like, oh, and then I'll do this for the album cover, and then if I can get it onto iTunes, I can. And she's like, you know what? Just write the song first. Let's start with that. Start with the.
Over analytically people, maybe I'm the same, we can get ahead of ourselves. It can end up being an act of self-sabotage to see all these 300 pieces and then, whoa, we didn't take the first step or something like that. It can lead to overwhelm. It can be so your wife, I think, is right.
Yeah.
But that's okay. You just got a brain that can think about a lot of things. You just want to use that to your benefit.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to temper some of our tendencies and to become more effective. But there's still a fundamental. It's good that you think about the album cover. It's good that you think about these things. It's just about managing that so that you can remain effective.
Yeah. Yeah, and you talking about self-sabotage. That was kind of the issue in my last band. Well, not my last. I played with one other band. But the band that I was in for almost a decade out here, I always felt, that we played really well together in rehearsal. And I always felt that, like, people who came to our shows, even girlfriends, wives, whatever, they never heard us like at our best because the singer, he's very talented, but he's also kind of self-destructive, and we would rehearse songs and know him front to back, and then he would throw in a song we hadn't rehearsed, that we had played before, but it's been 6 or 8 months since we've played it.
So a wild card that didn't help. It's like this surprise. It was not helpful.
Or any time it felt like we were doing well at a show, he'd sit there and he would talk for 5 minutes and ruin the flow of the the energy and things. And I would say to myself like, he's scared of succeeding. He's afraid of succeeding because what that might bring with it.
Yes.
The pressure or whatever.
It's a very common thing, and we've all done it in some ways. But I have found our brain, while it can be a pest, a pesky saboteur, and also we can use our thought ability to uncover and undo those sorts of things. But it is up to us. And when you're dealing with someone else who's sabotaging themselves or bringing you along with it, that's a tricky situation.
Yeah.
You can't really control them.
Right.
But I'm sure you learned a lot from that experience.
I did. And, I wish him well and everything. I know ill will. But, I mean, we just had our own paths to take. And I just didn't feel like I wanted to be around the negativity. I've changed things around, in my life. And, I feel positive. And, I used to dwell on the things I didn't have. Talking about all these ideas that we come up with, getting on stage or being famous or, things that I'm sure everybody thinks about whether they talk about it or not. But, and then just being happy with, like, what I can do. Or, I'll say to my wife, as far as drumming, like, I never really learned my rudiments. I'm not very... I don't think I do drum rolls very well or even fills that great. And then I say, well, I never learned how to do it. My wife will say, well, what's stopping you? And I say, well, now I'm older. It's like, it's too late for me. And she's like, yeah, but think about if you start learning that now, 5 years from now, where you'll be. Yeah. You'll have that to fall back on.
Right.
So,
well, these are, again, sort of like... poisons of human beings that have floated around from ear to ear and entered everybody's mind. It's too late. I didn't do it. These are alibis for us for not taking action, and very common ones. And it takes a sort of exceptional willpower sometimes to overcome that, or a good wife that can help too, because that's a mirror saying, they're nice about it, but it's like, no, you're full of shit right now. You're making this up. No, I'm not just saying you. I've been there too, and like my good friends who are married, if you have a good spouse who's like reflecting back on you, hey, you could do this thing. Yeah. Try it out. It's a good thing.
Good spouse or a good friend, just someone who's going to call you on your bullshit. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to like make it seem like everybody who's creative has all this self-doubt. I'm sure we all have doubt from
probably
time
a
to
majority.
Time. Yeah, but I feel like, at least with me, I have these ideas in my head, and then trying to get them to come out like I hear them. I have a lot of... Like, I enjoy playing music, but I have these thoughts in my head, like, even when we were playing, I'm like, I'm kind of getting in a little over my head. I mean, I play guitar, I enjoy, doing solos or whatnot, but I never studied guitar. Sometimes I'm going to hit a wrong note or whatever because I can't remember all the scales and everything. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's like, don't let that stop you. Go out, create, and have fun, and learn as you go. And
that's the brain interfering. It's trying to interfere. You're right. You should not let it stop you. But also, it's really a mental just distraction. Yeah. It's totally irrelevant, really, to the process in mind. So for us smart people, that can be a problem if you overthink stuff. Because there's really none of that has any validity, what you just said. Because how many musicians had not been trained or self-taught and world famous?
Sure.
How many have not, learned, like, whatever scale, whatever this? It didn't stop them from doing something. And it's all in your mind. But our minds... I believe it takes cultivation, willpower, and discipline, and just work. It's some of the hardest work to get this thing between your ears to be your ally and not let it stop you, or you to be your own ally and put it in its place. And that's one of the reasons that I like this title of the Artist Mindset podcast, because the mindset thing I know can be it's like the pivotal thing for us is our mindset, and it's never done. You go out, you sell 1 million records. well, then like you said, there's that follow-up.
Yeah,
and then you
you
could
gotta
freak
live up.
out. You could, some artists, they disappear for 5 years or 10 years because they can't handle it, or just on a local, more normal scale, we do something well, and then what if we freak out? What if we can't do it again? And our mindset comes into play. And so the mindset thing I think it's front and center of what I want this whole podcast to be about. So I think it's good we're talking about it, and also the honesty around it. I think personally, I've known how beneficial it is to be honest and to go seek out and talk to people about these things, because it has always helped me see things a little more clearly or more accurately.
Yeah.
Because so many of the time our brain is like literally lying to us.
Yeah.
It'll say things like, well, you haven't studied this enough to really do a good job. And then someone talks themselves out of doing something that someone wants them to do. And someone else is like, you're good enough, I think you're good enough. But then they're like, no, I can't do it. And that kind of thing. Where it's all up here and how we react to what's going on, whether we believe that crap in our heads or not.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, we're our own worst critic, and you're always fighting that thing that's telling you not to, or that you can't, or something. And you're like, I can't. And being a musician, I mean, especially when you're performing. I mean, these professional musicians, you have to be perfect, night after night after night. People get disappointed, they want their money back. And
For a sought after band with a hit.
Well, I mean, anybody. Even if you're 90s band playing at Harlow's, a local venue here, you wanna be on top of your game, and you want to I don't know, just you have to convince yourself that it's okay to just play and to just do things, and don't think so hard about it. You believe in yourself, and be able to do these things.
Absolutely. Well, everybody has to have come to enough peace in themselves that they're able to function and move forward.
Sure.
And those who can't function or can't move forward, well, we've heard about them. We've felt that way ourselves. It's just this give and take in life. I think many of us go through, working with our own headspace and our own attitude. And I could never. I just don't think it's possible to overstate the importance of that and that factor in everything. I've had times where, some bad experience set me on a tailspin for years in some way around some project, or putting aside this project, or just suffering because this, relationship didn't work out. I'm talking about just in the world of music, professional things, and disappointments, and things that didn't work out. And of course, everybody can go through this just in their own personal life, and that too can be a factor. But when you have your head to deal with, that is the biggest question mark. I remember a long time ago talking to a music mentor who was talking about how people are the biggest risk. And he was talking about the music industry, and investing money in bands and artists and stuff that A&Rs and industry companies do. And it's a big risk when you're investing in this person, because you don't know if they're going to be, Axl Rose, crazy but famous, somehow get through it, but someone you have to take care of and hire someone to babysit and make sure that he gets through his day, or if it's going to be a great. Most people we're just human. This is one of the biggest liabilities apparently out in the record industry, and it kind of makes sense with the different psychological states that we could go through. And as a human, when you are the product and everybody's staring at you, and then you're this potentially neurotic or screwed up or very sensitive person, this artist. It's the least likely, really, fundamentally and temperamentally, we're probably the worst people to be the ones, in front of the spotlight with all these people. Maybe you should get construction workers or someone who's not as sensitive, up there in front of everybody's eyes, because so many of us are just so potentially easily screwed up by things.
Well, you go out there, you just, especially if you're writing the songs, you're putting all your emotions out there. I know even writing songs now, I've had discussions with my wife, I have an idea for a song, but I don't really want to write it because it's about this argument we had that we've since resolved But, I wrote it when we weren't getting along, and, I'll feel conflicted. I'll be like, I don't want to view you in that way. And she'll be like, well, don't even worry about what I'm thinking or how I feel. If it's good, you should record it. You should write it. You should get it out there.
Sounds like a good ally here.
Yeah.
And it's so true, because otherwise you kind of were psyching yourself out of doing something, which is like time immemorial. Songs have arisen from real situations,
sure,
and become this song, 50 years later or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you're robbing yourself of also like a catharsis.
Yeah, that
cathartic
too.
moment there, just getting it out and like venting and I've heard even recently in interviews, like Dave Grohl of Foo Fighters will say, like, he still gets like choked up when he plays Everlong live. I mean, they wrote that 20 years ago, and he's just like, it came from such a real place between him and his ex-wife, now ex-wife, and if he had never written that, like, no one would ever know that song, and sure, we wouldn't know any difference. But I mean, I think that songs like that, they're good songs and people enjoy them. They're kind of like the hit at the concert, and everyone can relate to that feeling of not feeling.
That's the thing, that universality.
Yeah.
Sometimes is usually the result of these little moments that a person has that they write a song about.
Sure. I mean, it's no coincidence that most songs are about, relationships or love or life. I mean, it's all things that we can all relate to. It's all things that, evoke emotion.
And I think the real bottom line here, this seems like the subject this has become, is about saying yes to yourself, following the inner instinct, and hell with what they say. My kingdom for a horse.
Yeah.
If this be treason, then make the most of it.
Yeah.
I think that was a revolutionary, Thomas Paine, or someone, I forgot who. But it's like, when you're an artist and you have an idea inside of you, you are literally forced to, in a sense, like, go against. Like, it's like treason for your conditioning. No, I'm going to go out and put my heart on a sleeve out, and for all these people to hear this song about that time when I was totally messed up and totally screwed up, and this other person I thought was totally screwed up, and I'm going to put it on a song. But sometimes that is some of the best stuff, as you're saying. But like, that inner impulse is what makes us an artist. And when you listen to it and you follow it, then magic happens. And I think that's the crux of it.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's been a very good discussion. And
yes.
So what do you want to do to close out? We're going to do a little more music. What are you thinking?
Try to play something.
Yeah, excellent. Let's play something.
All right. Let's do it.
All right, thanks Scott for coming and joining me today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.